When you chosen for this path, was there ever a moment, that classic hero's journey, rejection of the call to adventure?
There was uncertainty, not so much rejection, because by the time the class came around, I had already done a lot of studying about what channeling was. So it wasn't something I was afraid of. I did have the considerations like, if I do this, what's the public going to think? Am I really going down a path here that is something that makes sense in our world? But, I was just so interested in the process and the experience that I didn't think that much about it, because it was just, again, this is who I am. This is what I'm learning. This is what I'm excited to explore. So I didn't so much have hesitation, but I did have, questions about what this was going to become and where was this going to take me and what would it do to my life if I did continue. So those kinds of things definitely cropped up. And of course, just the whole idea of doing a channeling, as many channels have discovered, is an exploration of your own fears and your own belief systems that might not necessarily be in alignment with your true spirit. So it's a big process of letting go of things for yourself as well. And that was actually the more challenging aspect of doing it, even more so than doing it for other people, for strangers, was what it was doing in me in terms of letting go of things that I didn't even know I was holding on to, in order to make myself clearer and therefore a better channel.
What's really interesting is that, I mean, you started this process in the late 70s, correct?
Well, the channeling started in the 80s.
In the 80s. Okay. So in the 80s, where we are today in regards to metaphysics and spirituality and the concepts of meditation and yoga and all these kind of things, they weren't in mainstream consciousness at all in the 80s. We were watching the A-Team and Knight Rider.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, things like channeling and psychic functioning and stuff like that, you were considered a crackpot. You were just out of your mind, or you were deluded, or something along that line. And it's been gratifying to see that even if people don't have a complete grasp of it now, at least there's some consideration for it. It's even gone into the language, in the sense of whether they mean it in the way I do it or not. People always use the word, he's channeling that person, or she's channeling that person, or whatever. So it's become part of the language, and I think a little less of a taboo.
Right. So I have to imagine that, walking into this side of the world, I mean, you're coming from the film industry. So I understand the film industry. I've been in with it for 30 years. How did there had to be fear in doing this and like going out on, I mean, because you were going out on the deep end of the pool.
Well, it's not like I was sharing it with anyone.
Yeah. There was no web pages just yet.
It was the dark side of my life. But the thing that kind of opened it up for me a little bit is, even when I was doing the visual effects and I was going to the classes, and it was like I would go at the same time every day at the end of, and finally one person that I was working with in visual effects said, "Where do you go every Thursday? You seem to be on such a schedule with this." And I said, "Okay, here it comes." I said, well, do you know about things like altered states of mind and getting into, different things like that, and sort of connecting to other things that may or may not be, of this world? I was approaching it very cautiously. And she just said, "Oh, you're a channel." And I'm like, "What?" And she said, "Oh, my mother's been channeling for years." So it was just like, it's the biggest secret that everyone knows, but they don't talk about it.
So can you, for people listening who don't understand what a channel is, can you just give a basic definition?
Sure. Channeling is just being in an altered state that's called gamma in the brain. This is between 40 and 100 cycles per second. And everyone channels from time to time. Everyone's in that state. It's what we call being in the zone. When
Right.
you are doing something that you love to do, you're completely consumed by it. You have no sense of the passage of time. You think you've been doing something for 15 minutes. You look up, it's been 2 hours. That's the channeling state. So it's a natural altered state that we all do. But what we've discovered, and this is one of the reasons why we made the documentary that we made, First Contact, is we wanted to totally demystify what the concept of channeling was all about. So, in the documentary, I even had my head wired to an EEG machine to see what was going on in the brainwaves and the difference between my normal state and the channeling state. And we found there are some profound differences. But when anyone gets into that state, no matter what they choose to do with it, different things are happening. There's a higher state of connectivity, of association, of information synthesis and processing. There's altered perceptions of how things are interconnected with one another. And so you can bring through all sorts of creative acts, creative information. I mean, when a painter is lost in a painting, when a singer is lost in the song, they're channeling. When an actor becomes the role, they're channeling. So you can connect to many different things. You can use it in different ways, but it's a profoundly accelerated and upgraded state of being in which you can create and bring through information on a much higher level, kind of like standing on a mountaintop and seeing the big picture instead of being down in the valley and limited. So I just happen to, steer in the direction of connecting to what presents itself as an extraterrestrial entity who operates on that level consistently in terms of their frequency, their vibration from a higher plane of existence. Because that's also what happens when you channel, or when you're in that state of doing what you love to do, is your frequency, your energy goes up. As I said, the brainwave goes much higher. And it connects you to different things that are then possible to connect to from that level. So no one has to believe that Bashar is real. It might be another aspect of my own consciousness or personality, but I have to let it present itself the way that it does. And I mean, I have my own validations, like having seen the UFO and things like that, that tell me that he could be his own entity. He could be a real being somewhere, and that we're making a connection, vibrationally on a different telepathic level. But really, the point I always make to people is it's not about whether you believe that Bashar is real. The information that he shares with us is valid and real. And you can actually test what he shares with us as formulas and messages and information in your life and actually get the result he's saying you will get. So it's kind of like you can prove the information is real by getting an effect in your life. Whether you believe he's real or not is not the point.
To watch the full video, click on the link below, and don't forget to subscribe.